Right then, everybody, welcome back to the show where we speak to someone that has been on a game show and find out what happens behind the scenes. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you've been on, please?
Sure. This is Dennis Chase. I am in Palm Springs, California, but I was recently a Jeopardy champion for 2 days, which meant I was on the show for 3 days.
Oh, thank you very much. That's great. So when was it your episode aired? Your episodes aired?
My episodes actually aired in the last week. So we're speaking on April 15th. They aired on April 9th, 12th, and 13th.
Very, very fresh then, very new.
Yeah.
So when did those shows, when were they filmed, those ones?
Well, we with the COVID precautions, we actually had to go in on February 16th for a COVID test. That was the day before. And then the episodes filmed on February 17th and 18th. Because I was a holdover winner, that I had to come back for the second tape day. Jeopardy films 5 shows in a day with a break for lunch.
That's quite a quick turnaround, really. It's not been long since you'd filmed it for when it came out. It's really quick.
It's been forever because I've had to keep a secret for 8 weeks.
Yeah. Did you have to? You weren't allowed to talk about it, were you? Keep it.
No, they don't say we're going to prosecute you or anything like that. They're not. But what they say, and I think they put it really well, is that your friends and your relatives are going to enjoy the show so much more if they don't know the results ahead of time. They really guilt you into.
Yeah. It's a very polite way of putting it, isn't it?
Right.
Very kind.
And the way the U.S. laws work is your show has to air before they can pay you the money. So you don't want to give them any reasons for them to not air your show.
I've heard Jeopardy is quite a tough show to get on. How many times did you apply to get on it?
Yeah. Well, I actually did a speech about this called the 30 Years War. My first audition, I believe, was in 1990. They used to have if you were coming to Los Angeles, you could call a number and just come in to an audition. So that's I remember doing that. I probably passed the test at least 25 times.
Wow.
And when you pass the test, they say, you're going into our pool. We'll either call you or we don't. So that was it in the old days. Now you have the online test, and if you pass that, then you go into interviews and more tests. I think for this occurrence, I went through 2 or 3 Zoom interviews and took at least 4 tests.
That is a lot.
I had to pass each one.
So why does it take so long? Is it just such a popular show that there's so many people going for it? Or
it is a popular show. The Jeopardy people said that you can take the online test anytime. That means that over 150,000 people apply to the show every year. And only about 400 people actually make it onto the show. And only a certain percentage of them become champions. But there's just such a demand for the show. Now, one thing that happened this year, and I knew my chances were better, was that due to the lockdowns and quarantines and everything, they said, we're only accepting applications from people who are within driving distance. And I live in California, so my chances just went way up.
Yeah, perfect time for it then. And wow, so that's how it happened. Wow.
At one point, I was up for 3 quiz shows and 2 baking shows.
What was the application process? So you said it was on Zoom. Did they just ask some various questions, or
actually, you brought up a point that I forgot to mention. You do have to fill out a really extensive application as well. And you talk about your training. Every TV show wants to find out fun and interesting things about you. So before you even start the application, make sure you have some of those.
Yeah.
One of the ones that they used on the show is that I'm very distantly related to a few stars like Clint Eastwood and Hugh Hefner and Christopher Reeve. Noah Webster is not really a star. And we all harken back to the same Mayflower ancestors that came over with the Pilgrims. We all harken back to the same person. So we are technically related, although it's like 9 or 10 generations.
Yeah.
Wow. That's an example of an interesting fact. The one that was used on day 3 was that I come from English, Irish, and Scottish and French heritage. My great grandfather was Winfield Studley, a great Scottish name. And I said on the show that he died. I've come to find out that he and my great grandmother got divorced which is unheard of in those days.
Right.
And then she married Mr. Chase. So if that hadn't happened, my last name would actually be Studley and not Chase.
Oh,
and
wow.
that would have been a really hard name to live down in the U.S.
Wow.
So those are examples of interesting tidbits that you would put on your application. But they want to make sure you haven't committed any crimes, you're not about to be prosecuted, you're not running for office. So it's pretty basic information that goes onto the application. They want to make sure you haven't been on a game show in the last year, for example.
Yeah. So do they need a piece of interesting information every day, a new piece then? Absolutely.
And they reject some of them too. So going into the very first show, the show everybody's nervous, you have to give them 5. So here's 5 interesting things. And the funny thing about Aaron was most of the time he went, okay, this is the one we're going to talk about today. On my second day, he said, no, I don't want to talk about that one. I want to talk about your AIDS education work in South Africa. And I said, great. So the host has the option of saying, this was during the commercial break. No, we're going to talk about this instead. And, it's about 30 seconds to air and you're going, okay.
Wow. So they just throw it on you then, just pick something and quiz you on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, he chose something else on the list. So those were all things I was prepared to speak about, but I had already rehearsed in my mind what I was going to say about something else, and he picked a different topic.
So who was the host? They're doing guest hosts at the minute, aren't they?
The guest host that I had was Aaron Rodgers, who I did not know about before the show. He is the quarterback or the team leader of the Green Bay Packers, which is one of our professional American football teams.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That is.
He is easy on the eyes as well. By the way, that job is really difficult. Not only are you getting these scientific terms in 13 different subjects, but some foreign languages and things like that. I mean, I could do it, but no. It is not as easy as it appears. And, if you don't get the question right the first time, they don't usually stop, but then after the show, you have to go back and retape it.
Right. Say that bit again. I wasn't quite sure. So if you don't get the question right,
if the host doesn't read the host doesn't read the question perfectly. Like there was one about that mentioned the parietal lobe, and when Aaron read it the first time, he said something else. So they had to go back after. The contestants understood it, and you can read it, but it didn't sound right for TV, so he had to go back and record it again after the show.
Got you. Did that happen a lot, or was it just once or twice? Or?
Not with Aaron. I heard it happen more with other guest hosts. Sometimes there's a glitch that happens in the show too, and this happened with one of the. I think it only happened once or twice. There was another show that was taping where the video came up for the Daily Double, but the words didn't. So they had to stop the show. And there are legal people right there. The legal people talk about it with the judges. Then they come over and talk to us and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. On one of my shows, if your listeners are watching, the first show, there was a question about Bacardi. And what happened was the person who gave the answer, Pasquale, gave the right answer, but then the host didn't come in quick enough to say that that's right. So he kept on giving information because you can correct yourself until the host says you're wrong. And the additional information that he gave was incorrect. So they stopped the show and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. He initially gave the right answer, and it was only because the host didn't stop him that he went on. So we're going to judge that a right answer. We're going to go on with the game. They do have you turn around and like you're in a timeout so that you're not facing the board anymore, which is kind of an interesting situation. So
why do they do that? Turn you around?
It's so that everybody doesn't. Theoretically, somebody who's in the lead could see the position of the squares on the board and choose something that's more advantageous to them. So when they turn you around, nobody has that extra advantage.
Cool. Well, fair enough.
So there's one other thing that if you watch the game closely, you'll see. Every book that I read from every Jeopardy champion said, don't look at the scores until somebody hits a daily double. So for most of the contestants through most of the game, they have no idea what the scores are. But when you hit a daily double, you can actually do something about your score and plan strategically. So you will see when somebody hits a daily double, they'll look off to the side like this because that's where the scores are kept over the video monitor. But that's a really it really helps you focus on what's going on and the clues and the answers. So I absolutely did that. I did not look at the scores until I had a daily double.
Right. So what other kind of strategies did you use going into it? I found out today there's a book called Secrets of the Buzzer. Did you read that? Or
well, the buzzer has been, I guess, something that I lit up the interwebs about. Because I have a shoulder injury. It was actually worse back then. I just started physical therapy.
right.
So there were very few positions where I could hold my left arm that it didn't hurt. So I'm going to change my camera angle a little bit.
Yeah.
So I actually would put my left arm in front of me so that it was in the center, and I put the buzzer in this hand, and then I tapped on it with my index finger.
Right.
Necessity is the mother of invention. That's what. And everybody's talking about, oh my God, what an innovative buzzer technique. And it worked out really well because I beat other people to the buzzer.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't I sat there at home and I practiced this buzzer technique. I got to the show and I figured out what worked from the injury. So the buzzer is at least half the show. Most of the people on the show know most of the answers. And they just got beat to the buzzer. So the way that they time it is they say half a second from the last word, they will enable the buzzer, and you can't see it at home, but there are two lines of lights that light up on the horizontal sides of the board. So you either watch for the lights or you listen for the question. And if you ring in too soon, you get locked out. If you ring in too late, you get locked out. So I did pretty well with the buzzer.
So which did you watch for the lights, or did you wait for the words, or how did you do it?
I listened for the words. I don't think I ever saw the lights.
No.
But I did practice the buzzer at home. So one way to do it is to take a ballpoint pen with a little clicker on the top and practice ringing in. I also practiced standing up because that's what you're going to have to do during the show. And I also practiced with lights in my eyes because there's all sorts of lights in your face when you're on the show. Simulating real life conditions, I think, really helped me as well. Also helped me be a little less nervous.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I've been through it before in my living room.
Yeah, I've never thought about the lights thing before. Everyone just, I personally, I only think got to revise the questions, gets up to speed on your general knowledge. But then something like that's actually really interesting.
Yeah,
really
your focus is really important because not only do you have all that, but you have 6 cameras on the set. You have 10 people telling you different things at the same time. You have makeup, you have microphone. Maybe your clothes don't fit exactly comfortably. So you really have to get in a zone and focus in when the question comes up on the question. I wasn't even watching Aaron. I mean, Aaron is nice to look at, but he was not my focus during the show. I kind of blocked him out and listened for him to say you're right or you're wrong so I could go on to the next question. So a good level of focus and preparation and attention is really important.
So on filming day, how long did it take to film an episode?
Well, when Alex was there, evidently it took a lot less. So it's hard to say because of the number of things that could go wrong. But the first day I was there, when I was on the last show, you have to get there at 7 a.m. in full makeup and in full dress. And then you go through a couple of hours of orientation, including practicing on the stage and at the lectern with the buzzer. So that first day I got there at 7 a.m. and I left at 8 p.m.
Wow.
That's after filming 5 shows. Yeah.
Wow. That's
and then I had to show up the next morning at 7 a.m. in full dress and makeup.
Wow.
So I was a little tired.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's amazing how.
But that first day, you're not, on the stage the whole time. For most of that day, I hadn't gotten my number drawn yet, and I was watching the other contestants go through their shows.
So did they have you all in the green room, just sat around watching it together, or?
Yeah, there is no green room during COVID.
Right. So, of course, yeah.
So our green room or our holding area was the audience area of the Wheel of Fortune set. And I think they do it the other way too. When Wheel of Fortune is taping, then the Jeopardy studio is the holding area for Wheel of Fortune. So I actually got to visit the Jeopardy set and the Wheel of Fortune set.
A bonus then, 2 for the price of 1.
That's fine because I've already been on Wheel of Fortune in 1991. So.
Oh, nice. What kind of food did they provide during the day?
They said they were going to provide next to nothing because of the COVID precautions. So I was
Right.
actually pleasantly surprised. They did tell us ahead of time, including what to wear. Bring your own snacks, bring your own coffee, bring your own water, bring
Wow.
your own tea. There's not the famous cat, but the other cat, his sister.
Oh yeah.
So I brought all sorts of snacks with me, but then they served us a nice lunch. It was actually in the parking garage because there's space and there's ventilation. So one day it was like pasta with a salad, and another day it was like a chicken breast with a salad. And you get a package of cookies and the tiniest water bottle that you've ever seen. I found out that it's the same water bottle that goes into the lecterns. There's a little ring. So when you have a commercial break, all three contestants are going like, "Whoa!"
Wow. So
Let me just mention one other thing.
Yep.
The only time we did not have double masks on during the whole time is when you're behind that lectern. So when you rehearse on the stage, you can take the mask off, and when you're actually on the show, the whole rest of the time, except for eating, masks and hand washing and distance and all of that. So I felt very taken care of, at least in terms of germs and spreading COVID while I was on the set. But
you said there was a place for the water in the lectern. Was there anything else that we don't see? Just
we have a little black bag. It's probably, I'll show you just for comparison, probably a little smaller than my tablet. So in that bag you had a packet of Kleenex facial tissues. You had a hand sanitizer. That's where you put your mask, and you had the makeup powder puff. Now the makeup people couldn't touch you either, so they would fill up a powder puff with powder, and you had to come there with your makeup on anyway. And then during the show, at every commercial break, standing 6 feet away, the makeup people would say, "Refresh your powder." So you go in your little bag, which is down by your feet, and you pick it up and you take out your powder puff. So one time I'm doing this, I'm touching everything up, and I heard Dennis, use the other side. I had used the wrong side of the powder puff, and I was taking off all of my makeup. And being shinier than the average person, that was not a smart thing to do. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think we've got a similar look going on at the minute, I think, haven't we?
So yeah, there's a little bag. There's a little ring. It's only about this big with a bottle of water in it. You have the pen with which you write on the glass for your answer and your bet. And you also have 2 pieces of paper and a Sharpie. One is to figure out your final bet, and the other one is to back up the piece of glass and the pen in case that goes on the fritz and you need to complete your answer. And I've actually seen that happen during a show.
Oh wow!
That's all that's at the lectern. Of course, what you don't see is when you ring in and you're successful, there's a little tiny line of lights that you can see to let you know that you have rung in successfully.
Oh.
And at the bottom, there's one for the host too. There's a little tiny light that goes on to let him know who rang in successfully.
Oh, interesting.
So again, that's another thing to watch. With the cameras and the lights and the water and the pen, you need to watch and see when you got in. And I had to, they warned us during rehearsal about doing the Statue of Liberty. So when people come in, when people ring in and they can't get in and they can't get in and they can't get in, they get more frustrated and their arm starts to go up like this. And they start doing the Statue of Liberty when they're trying to ring the buzzer. You can see that on my second day, not with me, but with the person to my left.
How much preparation did you do yourself for the questions? Did you do a lot of practice quizzes or anything like that?
Yeah, you've already heard me talk about when the show was live on TV, how I would practice. I usually did about 4 shows a day at least, between the live show and the Jeopardy archive, which is a website. And that was a metric which showed me which categories I was weakest in. So I studied those categories. I didn't study the categories I was really strong in because you either know it or you don't. Math, science, mythology, LGBT, all of these things that it's like, no, I don't need to study these. I studied the awards for the last 10 years, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. Since sports is a weak category for me, I studied what the major awards are in every sport, like the Davis Cup, the Grey Cup, And for the last 10 years, which teams won the major sports awards, the Super Bowl, the Stanley Cup, and things like that. Olympics has always been a strong sports category for me, and that came in handy. You want to have the metrics to know what you're missing to study those categories, and also which categories came up. I was going to put more time into opera, but it doesn't come up that often.
Right. Yeah.
So having those metrics really helps. So practicing the game, absolutely. You need to know what some of the stranger categories are, like before and after, and crossword clues, and potent potables, things like that. But the metrics will tell you what your weak areas are, and also which categories come up. I had flashcards for world capitals, which came up, U.S. capitals, U.S. presidents, things like that, literal flashcards.
Like quiz websites, did you do any of that, or did you?
Yeah, there were some quiz websites. I can't remember what they call it, but there are some phrases that come up on Jeopardy all the time, like Chinese American architect. That's I am Pei. I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones are. It's just they use this phrase every time to describe this person. So there was a quiz program that had all of those in it. I think I had 75 of them. Finnish composer Sibelius. They always refer to the person in the same way. So those sites were helpful to study things like that. I actually found that some of the under 15 sites were really helpful. Like there were geography quizzes for teens online. There were US presidents quizzes for teens online. Those were already made. I could study those really easily. And they don't go into the level of depth. I found that was a good kind of depth range for learning information that could actually be asked on the show, because they don't get into really esoteric information on Jeopardy as much as it seems. If you know a little bit about the subject, you're usually okay. People ask, did you get all sorts of great, we call it swag, all sorts of great, prizes from Jeopardy? And the answer is no.
Oh.
You get a tote bag, which is a little bit flimsy. You get a baseball cap, and that's it. I meant to try and find it before the show, but we had masks on the whole time, and I had friends who made me a special mask that tied up here and tied down here, and it was made out of glitter material. After about 30 minutes, the people on the show said, you need to take that off, because not only did I have glitter all over myself, but I had it over like the next three contestants.
Oh, yeah.
So they have the point I was getting to is they have the world's smallest lint roller. It's about this big, and it says Jeopardy on it. So I have that as a prize as well. But fortunately that worked, but I changed out my mask. I probably had 24 masks with me, so I was okay.
Well stocked.
Yeah. And what I liked about this, that you could wear a KN95 mask, which are a little bit too tight for my face, but you could position that under it and then put the other mask over it, and it worked really well. But that's another lesson for potential contestants. Do not wear anything with glitter to the show, because it's going to get all over everything.
Good tip. So I was just wondering about your strategy on the show. I've seen some people go for the higher amounts first. Did you do any of that, or did you go from the top down? Or
I chose to change categories more often than I would have when I'm home watching the show, just to throw the other people off a little bit. To be honest, the first show you're just trying to survive, and not looking at the scores. I just did what I could. They do say to try and go to your stronger categories first. I think most of the champions say that. It's just such a whirlwind, and when I walked out of the shows, I probably couldn't remember half of the questions that they asked. It's just such a blur, and all the lights, and you're so nervous and focused. But I didn't really have that much of a I'm going to bounce strategy, or I'm going to stay on the subject. I do know that I didn't run any category. I didn't go from the top to the bottom.
Right. Yeah.
And answer everything in every category. But there were some categories I did really well in, so I came close to running categories.
Oh, good.
But I did have a daily double. I think I mentioned it earlier. I had sort of resolved in my mind that I would not bet more than half of my total in any daily double. The only exception to that was if it was late in the game and I was really far behind, I might consider more. And I think I pretty much stuck to that. I did make one really expensive daily double bet that I lost. I was like, oh, that hurt.
Was that on the last episode where you didn't come first?
No, that was the second episode where I was about, I think I was about $12,000 ahead, and I bet $7,000 on the daily double and missed it. So I ended up with 22,500 for that game. If I hadn't missed the daily double, because there was Olympics, a category I know in the final Jeopardy, I probably would have been closer to 50,000.
Oh, unlucky.
So that was painful.
Yeah. Ooh.
But you know, if you don't risk anything, you don't gain anything. So
absolutely. How much did you win over your episodes?
So the two episodes, well, they've already aired, so I'm fine. The two episodes that I won were both runaways, which means that nobody could catch me. The first game I won 25,900, and the second game I won 22,500, and then the third game, because I came in second, I won 2,000.
Yeah,
so that's a total of 50,400. I have learned since that it's pretty rare for someone to win in a runaway on their first game or their first two games. Somebody did win in a runaway on their first three games, but it is pretty rare. So I feel pretty good about that. It's not like I planned to be in a runaway, just the, that's where the points were. And my smart daily double wagering probably didn't jeopardize that.
Is there anything that we've missed? Like, was there anything funny or strange, unexpected that you can think of on the show?
I mentioned the makeup thing. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this. So I was wearing shoes that I'm not used to because I wanted to wear nice shoes, on TV. And I almost fell into the Final Jeopardy monitor. You can't take a picture with the host during COVID, so they position you next to the Final Jeopardy monitor, and he's in the host lectern. Excuse me. So I'm walking across the stage, and my foot catches on the new shoes, and I almost fall into the monitor. And we take the picture, and Aaron says, "It takes quite a good athlete to recover like that." And just first thing out of my mouth, I said, "You must have me confused with a really good athlete."
Oh.
But I did it. I'm preparing a speech about this, and my point on this is, when you're on your way to your goal, watch for the big blinking lights that are in your path. The Final Jeopardy board is literally a huge blinking light, and it was good not to trip over it and possibly damage the set. Yeah.
Sure, that would. A few producers in the background were going as you were looming towards it.
I think I told you the host was a quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
What's all over YouTube and all over social media now is a question that we all three missed on the Green Bay Packers. So it'll be nice to have that replaced by something else on YouTube.
What was the question? Sorry,
they asked about this Midwest. This is how we refer to the center of the country. This Midwest football dynasty won like 4 Super Bowls in the 1970s, and all three of us sat there and went. And you can see it on YouTube. He went, "Really? The Green Bay Packers? Hello." And it was a funny moment. I knew when that happened, that was going to make it on national TV.
That is definitely YouTube material, is that? Oh, hello.
This is Mr. Studley, who got introduced on day 3.
Mr. Studley,
He's named for Winfield Studley, my great-grandfather, and he wants to get down.
Oh, so how was he brought up? Was he an interesting fact, or?
Yeah, that was one of the interesting facts, that my last name was almost Studley. Oh, well, I can mention one more thing. The contestants are almost to a person very pleasant, and everybody's rooting for everybody else. There's really not vindictiveness or anything like that, or I'm going to stomp you or something like that.
Yeah.
There were a couple of people who were very, very quiet, and I think they were the most nervous, and that's why they were quiet. But still, they weren't mean or nasty or anything else. So it was a great experience in that regard, meeting some people who I could easily be friends with, outside of the game show norm.
That's good. So do you think they pick people that aren't going to be like that during the vetting process or anything like that? Or
having tried out 25 or 30 times, I know they used to say over and over again, we need to choose people who the viewers want to invite into their living room. So yes, they want to pick nice people. They want to pick interesting people. Wow, that's a backstory we haven't gone over. But they want to pick people who probably are attractive, probably, come across well on TV, aren't shy and reserved. I'm an introvert, but you couldn't tell it from this interview. So they ask you over and over again, what would you do with your winnings if you won a lot of money on Jeopardy? And this might be what got me on the show, because it's true. We call it a backstory. So one of my older brothers is a Gulf War vet, and he, over the last few years, has found it more difficult to maintain his quality of life. So he and two of my sisters, I have two sisters, they decided that they were going to combine households. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because my brother lives in Virginia and my sisters live in Massachusetts. That's over 1,000 miles apart. So he had to sell his house and they had to sell their house and then buy a third house to move in together. So I had promised that I would use a portion of my winnings to help that transition. And, I just responded honestly to the question when the Jeopardy people asked. And every time I told that story, they went, "Aw." It didn't make it onto the air. It did make it into they do a champions interview where they talk to the people who win just after they win. But that's the kind of story that I know they like. That's a backstory. Absolutely true. Yeah. I did a radio interview in between day 2 and day 3, and my sister says that when my brother saw that, it made him cry.
Oh, bless him. Oh, that's lovely.
What I say is, if you get money that wasn't expected, you should do good things with it. So that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's amazing that game shows are able to do things like that. They're not just big flashy things. They can actually really help people out. And yeah, speaking to people have bought homes with the money they've earned, or can really help people out, and that's something that doesn't really get noticed, I don't think, in game shows.
So my plan when I'm able to go back east and visit my family is to make a quick video and to show the Jeopardy people. I work in biotech, and we have patients visit us all the time to say, hey, the work that you do is really important and it changed my life. So I would love to make the video mainly for them to say, hey, the work you do is really important and this is how you have changed this veteran's life.
Oh, that's lovely, is that? Yeah, that's really nice. Oh,
maybe it'll motivate them to appreciate their jobs a bit more. It's interesting, and we talked about this, and all of the game shows, once you're a champion, have a champion alumni group, and they all have an LGBT alumni group as well. And Dave Andrade, who I know you've talked to, and Elliott Yates, who was on the Chase, we talked about this once, that do gay people have an inherent advantage going on game shows? Because we do so well. and I don't think it's anything like that, but I know in my case, I wasn't a sports person. I wasn't particularly good with social skills. When I found something I could do well, like math and science and trivia and quiz shows, I flocked to it and I practiced it and I got good at it. So I think that's possibly part of the explanation, is that, being able to do a solo sport or something that you found that you're good at is attractive to LGBT people. And maybe that's part of the explanation. The other chorus members that I mentioned, Dave and Elliott, we all sing together in the same chorus. The fact that we're game show people is sort of side fact to the point that we can get together with our chorus brothers and make some beautiful music together and change people's lives in that way as well. Because part of our mission is to help others through the difficulties that LGBTQ people face.
Absolutely. I interviewed Elliott, and he mentioned that he had, when he was on the Chase, he had I think at least one LGBT question, which he said was like, he said like even maybe 5 years ago that wouldn't have been a thing, which was amazing to think about how quickly it's progressed. Did you know? Yeah. Did you have any questions that?
I didn't, but I've seen a lot of Jeopardy shows. I've seen questions about Harvey Milk. I've seen questions about Harry Hay and the Mattachine Society. I have never seen them do an LGBT category, but I have seen a couple of kind of LGBT based questions over the year. They ask questions about Stonewall at least once a year. So the Stonewall in New York, which is the site of a famous uprising in 1969. So they're sneaking in. The question he got asked was about Grindr, which is a social media app, and we all just laughed hilariously when he got asked that question.
What was the question? Can you remember?
There were 3 websites listed or social media apps listed, and they say, which one is the one that said, use this app to put us out of business? It wasn't Grindr. It was another one. I don't remember what it was, but I'm sure he laughed internally a lot when he saw it. The other thing that I thought was interesting about Elliott was he had a big fan that he brought with him, and when he won his portion, he brought it out, and they cut it from the show. And it said iconic on it. If you could probably ask him for that still, but I thought it was hilarious. But evidently they didn't.
Oh, wonder why. That's different.
Yeah, he's a bit more outgoing than I am. I would never wear a purple suit on Jeopardy, but it looked great on him.
Bless him.
I did wear a rainbow shirt in my second episode.
Yeah,
you can see it under the Dublin sweater. Sure. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus has been around since 1978. And, ups and downs. Of course, the AIDS crisis decimated the chorus. But we have a lot of outreach. We do high school programs regularly. We have a special group for that called Rhythm. And it's really helped bridge a lot of understanding. I think it's really helped a lot of high school people say, there are more people who are like me. I can see role models maybe in some of the chorus people. We go there and perform and we tell stories about how it gets better. So to hopefully try and encourage them to bring their own selves to work and to school and things like that. I do some work in diversity and inclusion, and having the psychological safety to bring your own self to work or to school is so crucially important. And I work in biotech. It leads to innovative ideas, and us doing our work better. So we try and support that. But I've been in the chorus for 23 years. It's been a great experience. Now I have moved 500 miles away. So while the chorus is still virtual, I'm still a member. But I think I may have come to the end of my chorus tenure. So I will wish them good luck. I mentioned baking in passing. So we have shows that are like the Great British Bake Off here. And yes. I came very close to being on one of those. But one of the things that you can see on SFGMC TV is me making scones. Now, they're probably more American scones than UK scones, right. But they're still scones.
So how would you apply for, what show was it you nearly got on, did you say?
The quiz shows I nearly got on were The Weakest Link. There's a new version on the US, and The Chase, which is the one that Elliott was on. There is the Great American Baking Show. I almost was on that show in 2017. I made it to like the live auditions in Los Angeles. My grandmother was a baker. She had two boarding houses during the Depression in the US. So she actually went to a famous cooking school here in the US, the Fannie Farmer Boston Cooking School. And so I think that's where I got most of my beginning skills in baking was by her side. So a non-quiz shows, that's an aspiration of mine. There is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in the US. That could be the next show I go for. But I do like the Weakest Link, although I know they'll vote me off because I'm too smart.
Yeah, I always thought that was a big flaw with the Weakest Link, especially when it gets to the last three. The smartest one always goes, which just defeats the whole point of the show, really. Which, so do you know the baking show that you applied for? How do you send something for someone to taste? How do you apply for a baking show?
Well, it's a pretty similar process. You fill out a huge application describing all your baking experience and all these different categories, and they only want amateur bakers. And then there was a series of Zoom interviews. This was even before the pandemic. where they talk to you. You know, they want personality, they want backstories. That what I just told you about my grandmother was a great backstory. And then, so that was the first 3 rounds, the application and a couple of Zoom interviews. And then they said, okay, you're going to come to Los Angeles and bring 2 of your signature bakes. You know that term from the British Bake Off.
Yeah.
And then we're going to assign you a bread that you need to bring with you. And here's the recipe. So, you know, and you bring it down, and you're one of about 50 people, and you put your baked goods in what I call the room of a million calories. the room of a million calories. And when you talk to the judges, and, you know, they sample it, and they didn't. I made a cranberry tart with a plum topping, and then fondant flowers for my grandmother, because she always used to take us out. To pick mayflowers. Those are the flowers on top. And I grew up on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, we had a cranberry bog down the street. So that was in tribute to her. And they didn't like that tart. They said it was too tart. I said, hello, it's a tart.
Yeah.
And then I made something that they loved. These disappeared from the room of a million calories very, very quickly from the crew. We have a sandwich in New England called fluffernutters. And you take 2 pieces of white bread, you put peanut butter on one of them, and you put marshmallow fluff on the other. Talk about a million calories. So I made crisp peanut butter cookies, and then my homemade marshmallow filling in the middle, and then dipped it in dark chocolate. So I called them fluffernutter s'mores, because they're sort of like the s'mores cookie. They love them. Oh, everybody who saw those cookies loved them. So that almost got me on the show.
Thank you for very much for coming to speak to me today, Dennis.
If you have questions, or I didn't quite explain something and you want to follow up with a question, let me know. But yeah, thanks for reaching out to do this. I quite enjoyed it.
No, I've loved it. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll keep in touch if I have anything else to talk to you about, and I'll let you know when the show's up on YouTube. So thank you very much.
Sounds great.